All right. Well, shalom, shalom. It's good to be back on here. And today we're going to be looking at actually gut issues. You got gut issues. Well, we're going to be looking at specifically different types of leaky gut. Hopefully, some of you have heard about this term. If you have, well, yeah, if you have questions or want to interact a little bit too during this, that's fine. Or if you want to wait to the end, I will open it up for Q&A. But I'll scroll through. I don't think too many slides, but enough to kind of get started. So gut issues and leaky gut, they kind of go together, and I'll kind of explain a little bit, but these are some of the symptoms related to gut issues: bloating, diarrhea, gas, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic constipation. I'll talk about that because that's probably one of the most common symptoms I run into again and again. Allergies, asthma type issues, hormone imbalances, autoimmune is really big, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, mental health, brain fog, stomach pain, burning sensation, any type of skin issue, and adrenal fatigue are some of the symptoms of microbiome gut health things. Now, this talk's going to be a little bit more on the steps in the digestion that more so than diet, because sometimes when people get what triggers a gut issues is sometimes stress or hormone imbalance or an infection. Like this chart here is sometimes environmental influence. Genetics play a little bit of a role, but these different things can obviously influence the microbiome. And the microbiome is really important. It affects all these other lung access, skin, brain access. All it's like the chief microbiome of the microbiomes. So if you have something wrong in your gut microbiome, you can have something wrong in your brain microbiome or your oral microbiome of your mouth. That's why sometimes when people start having major teeth issues, gum issues, if their gut microbiome isn't working right. So very, very important. Also, vaginal microbiome ties into that as well. And again, the things off on the right there: diet, medications, chemicals, hormones, things like that, immune system markers all play a role in this. So I just wanted to show you that's kind of important. Chronic constipation is so common. It's probably the most common thing people come to me with digestive health. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up because it is one of the first symptoms for Parkinson type, dementia type symptoms. It's loss of smell, which is part of the digestive system as well. Really, well, actually, it's part of the nervous system, but really ties into the digestive system to be able to smell your food to produce saliva and whatnot. And also, constipation. Chronic constipation is one of the first signs of Parkinson's. Now, granted, there are a lot of other things, but the reason why I bring this up because a lot of people think of Parkinson's as like the resting tremor with the hands. When their hands are at rest, you'll see the resting tremor. That's one of the last symptoms. So a lot of times people wait till they're having tremors before they do anything. When really, if you have chronic constipation, things like that, it's a kind of an indication that something may be going on. So it's important to really address gut health early on and not wait to become a major issue. And there's a principle in digestive health, kind of like I was mentioned before, smelling. The neurology runs north to south. Like, so there's all these nerves that control all these, I call dominoes basically, where if they don't all knock down, then you can have a hiccup in your digestive tract. So you need to, your olfactory bulb helps you smell. Then you produce saliva and enzymes. And when you chew and swallow, which is a lot of bagel action, the release of HCl, all these different things are different neurological steps in the digestive system. So it runs really, the neurology runs north to south, just like kind of our how our body is put together, our nose and our mouth, and everything kind of moves in that direction. And we'll and so what we're going to be doing is going through a do-it-yourself gut assessment. As I'm walking through this, you may want to just look and see where your symptoms are at, and that may be the area of the gut where there's a hiccup or something's happening there. So as we're going through some of these symptoms, you may want to just take notes of maybe where you have issues with. And if you ever need any help or whatever, just let me know. I do work with people on this stuff And again, I'm not going to be really talking about diet per se today. I normally do talk a little bit about diet. I may talk a little bit about, it's really not diet, it's fasting, but how you can use that to actually help with some of these different symptoms people are having. So we're going to start upstream with swallowing. So when people have difficulty swallowing supplements, like it just is hard to just swallow, difficulty swallowing large bites of food. And I don't recommend swallowing large bites of food, but it's really just difficult for them to swallow. The need to chew food excessively before swallowing, difficulty to produce saliva when chewing, and dry mouth. If you like on a zero would be basically never, and a four would be always. If you're having threes and fours in this section, it could definitely mean that the vagus needs to be worked on. And we're going to talk about ways you can do that here in a second. Section two also ties into the vagus, and this is why it's kind of important for motility and constipation. Inconsistent regularity in bowel movements. So you may go from one extreme to the other. People who have like diarrhea and constipation and back and forth. Um, and obviously constipation where you can't go. Things are just backed up, or you can't fully eliminate bowel straining with bowel movements, diarrhea. And uh, you can actually, it's kind of weird. You can be, you can actually have diarrhea and constipation together. Um, and it's yeah, and not in just going back and forth too. So there's kind of some interesting things can happen. A need to use stool softeners, laxatives, enemas, stuff like that. All these kind of tie into vagal function. Now, this is kind of a weird picture. This is a side of a neck. Now, you have a muscle. I'll try to show this on the video here. I'm kind of small, so I don't know how to. I probably will lose my screen if I zoom and get. But you have this big muscle on the side of your neck, right behind your ear, called the SCM, sternocleidomastoid, and it is a really the big muscle. I wish I had a little arrow. Maybe I can. A little arrow right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but I'm kind of going up and down the SCM. Well, the vagus is tucked in between that and the carotid artery. It's a very small, and from the front view, you can see the vagus here and the right internal jugular and the carotid. So these, by the way, your carotid and your jugular are extremely important. So the fact that the vagus is tucked hidden, snuck in between those two structures, it tells you how important it is. Because if something happens to the jugular or the carotid, you are in massive trouble. So just knowing where the anatomy is, it tells you how important it is. But it controls everything from heart, lung, digestive, liver, gallbladder. I mean, it influences so many different systems. It's majorly involved in what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. So it's really important when it comes to gut health. Now, ways, and it's cranial nerve number 10. So if you have never heard of vagus activation, it's a big kind of thing. One way you can activate the vagus is sing very, very loud. One way I like to activate the vagus is praise and worship. There's Psalm 113, verse 3 says, "From the rising of the sun to its going down, the name of Yahuwah is praised." So if you like to worship and raise your voice anywhere from one to, yeah, actually 2 minutes will normally activate the vagus. But if you go longer, that's great. You're in the shower, you can praise, but by activating the vagus, it can actually help people that have constipation. And I really like praise. It just works really well. If you can't sing or don't like to sing, you could gargle very violently. It will also activate the vagus. I'm just showing you some different ways. I don't like using the tongue depressors, but it's like a gag reflex. If you touch the tongue depressor, the back of the tongue at the base, you'll normally activate the gag reflex. So that's the vagal activation. So, by the way, if you had a tongue depressor, you can touch the back of your neck and you don't have a gag reflex. That means the vagal tone is very weak, which is kind of problematic. Um, Slow breathing can help with vagal activation. Cold water on the face, cold showers can activate the vagus. This time of year, I probably won't be doing that. There's cryotherapy. cold plunges, all that stuff. This time of year, I don't think I'm doing as much as that right now. But these are just other ways you can activate the vagus. Most of the feedback for the vagus is afferent, meaning it receives information from our senses, five senses, and it goes up to the brain. It gets feedback about where you're at in space, temperature, all these different things. And one of the ways to activate the vagus is through vibration. So power plates, hypervibes, anything like that can actually be really good to activate the vagus. If there's someone constipated, if they normally stand or sit on a hypervibe just for a little bit, it normally will make them go to the restroom just because it activates the vagus. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes people use little devices that will go right in the ear to activate the vagus because there's a part of the ear that is stimulated when you touch that area. It activates the vagus by touch. So, I mean, there's a many different ways to activate the vagus, but those are just a few ways. But it's important for that vagal tone. And normally, when it's affected, sometimes people have an infection or something like that has happened. So, um, uh, but yeah, it's a major thing. Section three is probably the number one area, though, that I see that ties into also constipation, not just vagal tone, but it has to do with digestion of protein in the stomach and difficulty digesting high protein foods. And normally, when you have an issue with this, it feels like you have a brick in your stomach after you get done eating a protein meal. Excessive belching, burping, and bloatedness after eating. Offensive breath, like really bad breath, like over the top, and it doesn't go away. You notice that you're maybe having issues breaking down protein, a sense of fullness during and after meals, bloating within the first 30 to 60 minutes after a meal. So that's kind of a red flag that maybe something's going on there. It's important to understand that your pH has to get low enough to actually activate something called pepsin or HCl and pepsin to break down your protein. And unfortunately, a lot of people, their pH doesn't get low enough to actually activate pepsin. So what happens is they don't release pepsin, so they don't break down their protein all the way. Well, if you think about it this way, your muscles, your hair, your nails, your neurotransmitters, your hormones, especially peptide hormones like thyroid hormone, etc., are all made from protein. So if you can't break down your protein, you're going to have some deficiencies, hair loss, and things like that. So it's really critical. And another reason why the stomach acid is really important because not only will you not be able to break down your protein all the way, if you don't break down your protein all the way, and the surface area is not fully exposed, so it can be broken down, then parasites, different types of possible things that can cause an infection can hide in the meat that's not broken down, and it moves from the stomach into the small intestine. Now you can have a major parasite issue or whatnot. So when people have to keep doing parasite cleanse every single year, it may be an issue where they're not getting their pH right, not only to break down their protein, but actually to just nuke any type of parasite or thing that comes in their body that shouldn't be there. So good stomach acid is highly important. We're going to talk more about this with even gallbladder and also for the pancreas as well here in a second. So sometimes using things like apple cider vinegar after a meal or HCl can be helpful, or making sure you have good B vitamins in your things that are high in B, like raw honey. Royal jelly is also one. Now you may want to go easy on those because they can be kind of sweet, but those are just some things to maybe help give you the precursors to actually make your own HCl, where you don't have to take a supplement. But there are protocols on how to do the apple cider vinegar challenge and whatnot to help reset your gut. And when I work with clients, it's something we definitely want to work with, is trying to figure out what is the best. We want to make sure we're breaking down protein optimally. So we'll keep moving along here. Section four, stomach lining irritation and ulcers. This is pain, stomach pain, burning or aching 1 to 4 hours after eating. Need to use antacids after meal, heartburn when laying down or bending forward, heartburn after spicy foods, alcohol, citrus, or caffeine. All these things can be definitely a sign there could be possibly an ulcer. I will say if you're taking apple cider vinegar HCl, and I mean, it would really burn if you had an ulcer. One of the top reasons, as a matter of fact, the number one infection in the world is H. pylori, and it is the number one cause for ulcers. And unfortunately, the reason why this infection is so hard to get rid of, it has what's called a biofilm. And so a biofilm is kind of like what surrounds this bacteria. And basically, the biofilm is an alkaline film, which can change the pH of the stomach. It's one reason why people that have an H. pylori infection, it's actually hard to like get rid of it because it changes the pH of the stomach. At the same time, it drains the mucosal barrier, which can make it easier to have an ulcer. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture. I should have put a picture here of the mucosal layer, but on top of the skin, there's a lake called the mucosa that kind of is a buffer for the stomach acid. And what happens when you have H. pylori infection, that lake drains, and so you're on skin basically, and you can burn a hole right through your stomach lining. And so a lot of times you'll have to build up that mucosal barrier like with things like with vitamin A and whatnot, licorice root to help build that up so you can go after the H. pylori and get rid of it. And herbs that are really good with that is oregano can just about kill anything. Oregano, golden thread, and some of these things over here and whatnot. Tomorrow's email, I'll send out actually supplements that I would recommend if you suspect you had any of these things. I have a really good digestive enzyme that when we get to the pancreas part that I'll recommend too. So now, if someone, like I just got to mention that mucosal barrier, if it's been compromised, supplements that do have glutamine, licorice root, aloe vera, and things like that, marshmallow, slippery elm, these things have been used for a long time. Calendula are really great for healing up the gut, and normally the gut can heal up pretty quick as long as your hormones and thyroid balance is okay. And it doesn't take that long to heal a leaky gut. So if you did have an infection, which is a major cause of leaky gut, if you address that infection and heal up, repair the tissue, it can be relatively pretty quick. Section 5, difficulty digesting fibers and starches. And this can be beans. Like a lot of people have an issue with certain beans. They just cannot, they massively have issues, or fruits or vegetables where they feel like they're bloating and things like that. Bloating within the first 2 hours after eating a meal. Pain and tenderness on the left side of the rib cage after eating. All these can be a sign of maybe not being able to digest your food properly. The pancreas not only releases insulin for blood sugar things, it also produces enzymes. Now, here's again where HCl is really important because HCl not only helps the liver activate the gallbladder, release bile, but it also then helps the pancreas to release the digestive enzymes. So this is really, really important. So people are always have to use digestive enzymes or have bile issues. It all triggers back to that stomach pH. So it's really, really kind of an important thing. Now, there are foods that naturally have key enzymes like amylase and protease and lipase. And these different amylase breaks down simple carbohydrates, protease for protein, and lipase for lipids or fats. And so different fruits have different types of like pineapples are really popular one, and these things as well. Again, I will put a supplement. Our family probably uses more than anything else when having digestive issues, especially when it comes to enzymes. And it can be a game changer if you're trying to break down some of these things, especially if you have bloatiness and gas and stuff like that after eating. A good enzyme can be really, really powerful. Sometimes we like to do an experiment where you take an enzyme, you take like, for example, oatmeal and a little bit of water, and it's pretty thick. And then you put one of these enzymes in there and stir it in. I mean, the whole thing is just nuked. I mean, it's completely dissolved. It's like there was no oatmeal in it. And you know how thick oatmeal can be. It just in very short time, just, I mean, totally breaks all that down, which is very interesting. And it really does help with even with children if they have issues going on sometimes, but just by taking a little bit of extra enzymes can help, just make sure you're breaking down your food a little bit better. So that can be helpful. And now we're getting to the gallbladder, difficulty digesting fats, from gallbladder release of bile, abdominal bloating. And this is the one where you can really get distension in the stomach, distress after fatty, oily, fried foods. And if that's happening all the time, this could be definitely an issue. Burping, fish tasting after taking fish oils and eating fish. There's a lot of people that have this one that they're almost like burping up fish oils and whatnot. Now, this time, the pain between the shoulder blades, this is a major one. Right between your shoulder blades, a lot of times people get chiropractic adjustments right between the shoulder blades. That is a major referral point for the gallbladder. Matter of fact, sometimes what you can do if you have a spouse or somebody can touch you right in, like if they take their thumb and touch you right between your shoulder blades there, they can do a capillary refill test. They take you take your thumb away, and normally you'll see a mark, and within 2 seconds it should look normal again. But if it takes longer than 2 seconds, you're probably having you're not getting capillary refill time quick enough. And this is actually a way to assess possibly this gallbladder, actually liver gallbladder complex, and meaning that it's not there may be a blood issue there. It's not getting proper blood. There are ways to actually do, and I need to do a little video of the CPR on the liver, where you can actually do a technique and actually it's kind of like doing CPR literally on the liver to help uh, push that bile through, especially if it's not getting enough blood in the liver gallbladder. So, but anyways, let me get back on here. So, but pain between the shoulder blades or in the right rib cage after eating, right under that on the front side where the liver gallbladder is, that could be an issue. Feeling like you're about ready to throw up, or it's very, after a meal, especially if it's has fat in it, that could be also a sign of gallbladder issues. And again, like I mentioned earlier with HCl, with protein, HCl is the number one reason why the liver does not release or activate, tell the gallbladder to basically contract the bile into the digestive tract, because the neurology goes from stomach acid being at the right level to activate the liver, to activate the gallbladder, to activate the pancreas. And that a lot of times doesn't happen because of the stomach pH is not correct. And so what ends up happening, you get a lot of sludge, possibly gallstones. Another reason for both of these is also a hormone imbalance with estrogen. If the estrogen is too high, this is a major reason why people get sludge and gallstones and constipation, when the E2, especially estradiol, may be at a range. Natural ways to help with the gallbladder and the liver gallbladder is actually coffee. There's a lot of research on coffee and being able to activate the gallbladder. And you got to be careful though. Some people that have fibroids or sensitive hormone things, they can't tolerate coffee. So you got to be careful, especially if you notice, for the females online, very tenderness. Like if you drink coffee, you get tender, like in the chest area, the breast area. Then you may want to back off the coffee a little bit, especially when people have a high estrogen balance. But you could use a coffee alternative like Dandy Blend or some Dandelion, which, like I have supplements that use, I mean, the top ingredient, some of them is dandelion. I mean, just straight up. And the research is really, really good on with dandelion, with activating the gallbladder for all parts of activation with the gallbladder. There's multiple steps involved in it. I'm not going to get into all that today. Then sometimes when people have their gallbladder removed or they really, really have issues, sometimes we'll use something like advanced TUCA, which will improve bile flow by 300%. So if you're constipated, you will use the restroom. And I will say when people get their gallbladder removed, they normally initially will have almost go from one extreme of constipation to diarrhea. Then they'll, after about a year or so, they'll go back and then they'll go back to constipation again. So, because the issue has never really been dealt with, it was actually a liver issue and a liver stomach issue, and that still needs to be dealt with, even if you got your gallbladder removed. And so sometimes taco, it can be a powerful way to get the flow increased. Valuation of the bowel movements and stool. I didn't want to, I was going to put some pictures in here, but I decided not to gross everyone out um, with just different. You can tell a lot by your stools. I will have to say that. But if you see food in your stool, there's definitely an enzyme issue. You're definitely having some digestive issues and may need some enzyme help or HCl or something to get that pH right in the stomach. Mucus in the stool, a lot of these things can be sign of different symptoms. Floating stool, this can be gallbladder, excessive foul stool. There can be different infections. Clay colored stools could be gallbladder again. If you ever see blood in the stool, that's a little bit that's almost a red flag. Whenever you see blood almost anywhere, that's kind of an issue. Or dark stool, blood on toilet paper after wiping. Those things could be more serious, like an autoimmune, like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or something like that. And there are ways to check that out. One of my favorite labs to run is Genova GI Effects. This is a big lab. I mean, it tests for cal protectin, which is you can actually see it under the inflammation marker. It's the top one there. And that's how when people have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or things like that, that's going to be a very important marker to see how much inflammation is going on in the gut. But it also tests dysbiosis, which is an imbalance between good and bad bacteria. Um, are you able to digest all these different things? So this is a massive lab that tests for prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, all these different things in different types of infections, parasites, bacteria, you name it. But yeah, it is a stool lab, but it can be helpful to kind of figure out what's going on. And we finally reached the part that I want to spend a little bit extra time with because I wanted to say how you can know the different types of leaky gut. Most people realize there's leaky gut, but may not realize there's different types. So I'll just talk a little bit about this. So increased frequency to reactions to food, I mean food sensitivities, inflammation, swelling, pain throughout the body. Like you feel like you're hurt everywhere. Unpredictable bloating and swelling. This can be an indication of intestinal permeability in the literature, more commonly known as leaky gut. And basically, this I'm going to explain how leaky gut can actually cause food sensitivity, but also other issues as well. But when it comes, I probably should have threw a slide in here about this, but there's something called immune tolerance, and it basically says how well can your immune system identify things and deal with them. So there's the first part of this is oral tolerance. Can you tolerate what comes through your mouth? The second part of this is can you tolerate chemical or environmental tolerance? Then the last part of it is what's called self-tolerance. Can you tolerate yourself? And if you can't, that's called autoimmunity. So when someone has autoimmunity, you already know they have an environmental loss of tolerance and an oral loss of tolerance, meaning they have multiple food sensitivities. So it's very common. Leaky gut plays a big role in setting up for something like this. Now, like mentioned earlier, leaky gut is kind of a compromise between the tissue, and I want to look at this a little bit more. So there's really four types of leaky gut. You can have something called paracellular leaky gut, where the tight junctions have been compromised, or you can have something called transcellular leaky gut, where the cell itself has been ripped right down the middle, which is a little bit more serious. But the third type of leaky gut is when you have paracellular, what's called endotoxemia. It means not only is the tight junction compromised, but you got antigens that are in the stomach slip through down into the bloodstream. And if anything gets down in the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, like LPS, lipopolysaccharides, um, highly inflammatory, gram-negative bacteria, once it gets there, or any food particle that passes through and gets in the blood, it should not be there. The body tags, the immune system, it tags that food. And so the next time you put it in your mouth, you gain a sensitivity to it. This is how sensitivities happen, is when there's a compromise in the gut barrier and it gets tagged as it gets into circulation. So that's why it's so important to seal up these leaky guts so you're not getting those antigens in the bloodstream. I'll talk about the LPS a little bit more here in a second because that one's actually really serious. Then the fourth one is transcellular endotoxemia, meaning not only do you have the cell ripped in half, but the antigen is going right down the middle of the cell into the bloodstream, and this causes a major issue. Now, one of the labs I run is called the Cyrix Array 2, and this can determine between all four of those things I mentioned just a second ago: paracellular permeability, transcellular permeability, or paracellular endotoxemia or transcellular endotoxemia, which that last one's the worst when you have the cell ripped in half and things are, getting a circulation. The good news is this can be fixed rapidly by addressing what's kind of going on here and not only sealing up the gut, but also getting all the LPS out of circulation in under 30 days. So there can be some powerful things to help unwind. For example, this is one of the reasons for autoimmunity as well. And one thing I want to mention, it's been shown that LPS derived from the gut that's gotten to circulation goes up to the brain and causes neuroinflammation tied into dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all that type of stuff. So this is a really interesting how the gut affects brain health with neuroinflammation. And there's study after study that shows this microbiome-derived LPS can actually go up and literally cause what people know as Alzheimer's and dementia type things. But it doesn't just affect the brain. When people have systemic inflammation all throughout their body and their joints, it could be LPS in those areas, and it is highly inflammatory. It's fine if it's in the gut, but if it's outside of the gut into the circulation, it will cause fires everywhere in the joints. I will also say when certain food sensitivities like gluten a lot of times will affect the synovial joints, like your knees and whatnot. If you have a sensitivity there, as soon as people get off gluten for a period of time, they're going to feel a lot better if they have a really serious gluten issue. Also, casein for a lot of people affects skin and also affects hair loss. So sometimes if you have a casein, which is in dairy, the protein in dairy, sometimes by getting off that can be helpful for healing as well. And and I believe these things can be actually healed completely. So and go in remission where you don't have the symptoms. In section 9, we're going to look at SIBO, which is small bacterial overgrowth. Um, and this normally has, again, the abdominal distend. It almost looks like someone's pregnant. It's like the lower part of their body just balloons out. And this is a red flag that the environment of the small intestine has backflowed, or I should say, the environment of the large intestine has backflowed into the small intestine, meaning it's kind of like your dining room, or actually, it's more like your bathroom has moved into your dining room. And the colon, the large intestine, has a completely different bacteria profile than the small intestine. So if you're starting to have small bacterial overgrowth, this can be a major issue. So, and this can be even with another thing is if you're taking probiotics and natural products, and this is causing a lot of issues, then it's probably an indication that the SIBOs going on. There's different ways like breath tests to test this out and whatnot to figure out if this is going on. There's sometimes do it yourself type tests as well. Um, Malabsorption, this is probably one of the more serious things. This is different than maldigestion. Maldigestion means you're just not breaking down your protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Malabsorption means you're not getting into the body. So in our digestion system, we have these little microvilli in the small intestine, these little tubules that once your food's broken down, they kind of go into these little hair-like projectiles down them, and then they go into the bloodstream, and that's the way it should happen. They should digested food should go down these little microvilli through the gut into circulation. So the only thing that goes in circulation is probably things that are broken down, amino acids and vitamins, minerals, and things like that. So that's what should be getting in circulation, not whole pieces of food or antigens or all these parasites, bacteria, and fungus and things like that. That should not be getting in circulation. So, anyways, um, losing weight, having difficulty gaining weight, losing muscle mass, bruise easily, bleeding gums, muscle spasms, swelling of the tongue, deep muscle or bone pain, which that could also be thyroid issues, especially if you're dealing with someone young, a young child. If they complain of bone pain, that is a red flag. I definitely check their thyroid right away to rule that out, and it could be even something more serious than that. But deep bone pain for a child is not normal. Do you feel like you are not absorbing your nutrients? And if all these are three or four, it could be a sign of malabsorption. Now, on the scope of digestion, malabsorption is probably the most serious. It's on the far right. So on the other end, a dysbiosis, maybe you have just an imbalance between good and bad bacteria, or the type of bacteria you have is just out of balance. Then the second thing is possibly just enzyme deficiency. Maybe you don't have enough lipase, can't break down your fats, or protease, can't break down your protein, or amylase, break down your simple carbs. Then you have inflammatory issues, gallbladder dysfunction, gastritis, intestinal permeability is leaky gut. Then you got SIBO. Then you got malabsorption. Malabsorption is the most serious because you could be eating organic, you could be doing everything right, and the food is just not getting into the bloodstream. You are not assimilating what you're eating. And so the good news again, those microvilli, little hair things, they can get what's called blunt brush border in some infections, meaning they get mowed down. But the good news is by taking things like vitamin A and that gut repair thing that I talked about earlier with licorice and those different things, you can grow back those microvilli in a very rapid time and start actually being able to get nutrition back in your body again. So I'll send that supplement in the email tomorrow as a follow-up if you're interested in that, or if you ever want to do coaching and look deeper into any of this, we can always do that. I'm almost finished. I think I only have two slides left, maybe three. But so today I'm really not talking about diet per se, which that's a whole nother thing. Obviously, being a believer, I believe that we're blessed when we follow the instructions, and there is in the book of Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14 instructions for what foods are designed to be eaten, or meat type foods, I should say, like your what's in the water, what's in the air, what's on the ground, what we should be eating, what we should not. Some things just aren't designed for food, and it can really really affect us if we're eating things that just aren't designed to be food. And by the way, a lot of those unclean foods, and I will do a talk on this in detail later on. So I think people will be shocked how the Almighty has given instructions for our good. Literally, it's not a burden; it's a blessing. But with that being said, is trying to eat clean, biblically clean, organic. Obviously, that's awesome. Non-GMO, if you can try to avoid that as best as possible. All those things are great. But at the same time, I've had people where they do all those things and they still maybe they got an infection or they went through a extreme stress crisis and just set up for a hormone imbalance that set up for an infection, and then they had leaky gut. Then all these things trigger. So I've had some people that literally done as best they can, and maybe just life circumstance, they still got something to where it is compromised their digestion a little bit. So one tip I will say with diet is trying to make sure you have some gaps in your meals and not eating all day long can be strategic in trying to clean up the digestive system and prevent food sensitivities and whatnot. Because when you have gaps, you have a period of time for autophagy, which is the way the body sweeps and cleans. But if you're always eating, if there's always protein in the system, you're never going to really fully be able to sweep and clean. Obviously, at night, that's a period of fasting. And I'm going to be doing a talk, and I don't know the date. It's coming up, I think, in March on fasting for breakthrough. And I'm going to talk it from a couple different perspectives on fasting. There's all sorts of different types of fasting for spiritual reasons, for health reasons, and we'll be looking at that in detail. So I won't get into too much of it right here, but I will say when it comes to leaky gut and even for a lot of autoimmune issues, it can be very strategic in helping for that stomach to grow back the microvilli, to help with food sensitivities, to really give the stomach a chance to clean up house, sweep through, and especially when we remove protein from the diet for a while. So sometimes a very short fast can be really powerful for people that have a lot of sensitivities, asthma, and things like that. It can be strategic, and we'll talk about that more during that talk. Now, on this Thursday, I will be doing a talk. It will be the new moon, by the way, um, on Thursday, January the 30th, on created with a purpose. And this will be more of a scriptural talk, but I think it's going to be really empowering, that we're all created for a purpose. And since new moons are all about renewal and new things, I feel like this is a good fresh time to kind of refocus and things like that. So I'll be doing that on Thursday. Then on Friday, actually, I'll be continuing a series on three things, and I'll be on part two. By the way, I will maybe send out an email tomorrow, part one, which I end up actually taping at home. So we had a home laid back Sabbath fellowship. So it was with my family. So we have quite a crew. So you may hear some baby sounds and some other things, but I think we sang a couple songs, and I did the first part of that three things. And just real quick, the three things are three things I was never taught in the mainstream church. These three things just so happen to be absolutely critically important for our walk. And so whenever I'm invited to speak at different Bible studies, I always start with these three. So because if I go anywhere else, a lot of people won't have the vocabulary to even follow along. So this is kind of basic, but it's so foundational to really understand big, big things in the scripture. So, anyways, I'll be doing that on Friday night at 9 p.m. For those who don't have any fellowship anywhere and want to jump online, I will be online this coming Friday too. So, Thursday and Friday this week. So it's kind of quite a few nights online. So, anyways, I am finished, and I'm gonna just pause for a second. I'm gonna open this up for Q and A. So.